Sora. Good morning, everybody. Like Laura said, my name is Doug King, spelled K-I-N-G. I'm a lawyer with Pivot Legal Society, and I'm counsel for the 12 residents of Wonder and the Palace Hotels before the residential tenancy branch. And today marks the start of that group action against the landlord, George Woolsey, for compensation for the tenants. It starts at 1 o'clock this afternoon when our first tenant from the Palace Hotel will give evidence regarding the conditions of the Palace Hotel and why tenants need to be compensated. At Pivot, we've taken the position that while we support the city's injunction and the city's efforts to get the landlord, George Woolsey, to bring these conditions up to code, there also needs to be some compensation for the tenants in this situation who have had to put up with those conditions in the hotel. So what our hope is throughout the next week, starting today and going through next Thursday, the hearings will be a way for the tenants to express what they've had to go through, and that the residential tenancy branch can give them compensation for that. We've heard today that there's been some major developments in this case. Since we originally filed this application about a month ago, we've gotten reports from tenants that they've been harassed, that they've been threatened, and in some cases they've actually been evicted by the landlord for either participating in the city's injunction or for filing an action against the residential tenancy branch. And the message that we want to send today is that it's the government's responsibility to protect tenants when they're in this kind of a situation. The provincial government needs to stand up for these tenants when they decide that they need to use a residential tenancy branch to uphold their rights. And we've asked Jenny Kwan's office, and we've asked Rich Coleman's office to make a statement recognizing the need for protection of tenants in these kind of situations. The reality is, if a tenant's evicted from this kind of a rooming house, an SRO, there needs to be government support so they don't land on the streets. There needs to be BC Housing stepping in and giving them some kind of permanent housing, some kind of relief, so that when a tenant stands up for their rights, they don't have to suffer the consequences. So a bit more detail about these actions. The tenants are going to be testifying individually over the next week. They'll be telling their stories one-on-one, and they'll be telling the landlord and the residential tenancy branch arbitrator the reasons why they should be compensated. Most of those reasons surround the damage to the building that hasn't been repaired, the fact that none of these tenants have been allowed guests since they've moved into the building, not even family or loved ones, the fact that their methadone has been controlled. In some cases they've reported it being altered by the landlord if they disobey the landlord's directive, if they do something that the landlord doesn't like. And that's the kind of layer to this case that makes it so important. It's not just about housing in this case, it's about health. They're both areas that the provincial government regulates. And we think it's time the provincial government sends a strong message. A landlord cannot manipulate the laws. A landlord cannot manipulate people's health for their benefit. And they need to apply administrative penalties in this case. We need to make an example of George Woolsey. We need to show other landlords, other methadone pharmacists, that this has to be taken seriously. Tenants' rights, health rights need to be honored. And what we hope is that through the residential tenancy branch actions, these tenants will be compensated for what they've had to go through.